This is Midday Sunday. We're shifting gears today. Now, our guest today is the Honorable Anthony Rendon, who represents the 63rd District, which is kind of the southeast Los Angeles County area.
Exactly.
This week, the Census Bureau confirmed what I guess a lot of us have known, that Hispanics, Latinos, are now the largest ethnic group, larger than whites. And there's, some folks can argue those kinds of labels.
Right.
But what you're concerned with, and the Latino caucus in Sacramento, is how that translates into elected representation throughout the state.
Sure. There's a study that came out recently and a number of studies which have shown that Latinos tend to be underrepresented at virtually every level of government, whether it's city council, county, the state legislature, but also the special districts, the school districts, water boards, etc.
Mm-hmm. What does underrepresented mean?
Relative to the population. So there are fewer Latinos in elected office than there are relative to the general population.
Is that important?
It's important that all folks are represented because they have different perspectives and they have specific views and come with different experiences.
Mm-hmm. There are districts, for example, here, the school district here in Los Angeles, where there was a real strong get out the vote, and it was really ethnic based. Is that really the American way?
I think what's important is that all folks have an opportunity to be involved in the process, and that there are outreach efforts towards geared towards all types of voters.
Mm-hmm. I happen to live in a city where my mayor is not Hispanic, my council member is not Hispanic, none of my elected representatives are Hispanic, but I don't feel that I'm necessarily unrepresented.
Right. And I think, again, what's important is that folks have access and folks have opportunities to get elected, and then it's up to the voters to make their decisions.
Mm-hmm. As we were getting ready to do this program, I happened to mention to you Art Snyder, who represented the 14th District in the City of Los Angeles City Council. He survived many, many attempts to recall him, and the basis for those recall attempts were only Art's not a Hispanic, Art's not a Latino, even though he always referred to himself as yo soy el hijo del barrio. And then we have Kenny Hahn, who served the 2nd District, Los Angeles County, for 40 years.
Right.
No matter what black individual they put up there, they couldn't beat him because people liked him. Right. So does that not cast some question upon what you're talking about? I
think again, I think what's important is that folks have an opportunity to run for office, and that folks have an opportunity to vote, to choose among candidates of various backgrounds, whether they're women, from the API community, from the African American community, and then it goes back to voter preferences.
And you're okay, or the Latino caucus is okay, if people in a particular ethnic group or constituency continue to re-elect people or elect people who are not of that same ethnicity?
I think what the Latino caucus is concerned about is, again, the underrepresentation of Latinos in all levels of government, and also
but, with all due respect, sure, you're not answering my question. Why is ethnicity important?
Ethnicity is important because different people from different backgrounds, whether it's gender backgrounds or ethnic backgrounds, as I said previously, come with different experiences. The immigrant experience is now the American experience. We see that.
It's always been, no?
It has always been, and that's why it was important that Irish Americans and German Americans got elected in the previous century. And that's why it's important that Latinos and Asian Pacific Islanders get elected in this century, because that experience informs the decisions that are made in Sacramento or Washington or downtown Los Angeles or on Beaudry with respect to LAUSD.
Yeah, as often as I have been to Sacramento and watched both houses in session, I wonder if when you were there on the floor of the assembly, if you have a sense that you're representing your constituency there, but do you have the sense that you are representing Latinos to the other members from the other parts of the state?
I think governance is always complicated, and you have the big picture and the little picture, certainly representing the folks of the 63rd District, also representing the larger state as well. Last year I worked on the water bond, which was a great example of that. We have in the city of Maywood, for example, which I represent, we have people who literally do not drink from the taps because of poor water quality. And then we have folks in the Central Valley who need access to water not only for consumption of water, but also for farms, etc. So in those instances, you're always focused on your local voters, and you're focused on the larger state as well.
What I was getting at was that I would hope, or I would imagine, that you would be one of your goals would be to amongst your colleagues there in Sacramento, increasing their respect for you and your district and what you represent.
Right.
You know, we can't just shine on the Latinos because they're Latinos.
Right. No, I agree with you. I think a lot of it is about the quality of the elected officials that we represent. If you look at my district, for example, I represent 9 cities, mostly in southeast Los Angeles. It's sort of a snake-like district that runs south into North Long Beach. But if you look at my district, in the northern part of my district, I have 5 cities where we have former council members in prison. Literally 5 of the 9 cities that I represent have former council members in prison. When you have those types of problems, the focus needs to be on the quality of the people who are elected.
And I would imagine that whether you're talking about Sacramento or in your district, that just that kind of history makes your job much more difficult.
It does. It makes it exceptionally difficult from the standpoint of, what's important for me is feedback. I come from the community-based organization. I worked for nonprofit organizations for 20 years, the Mexican American Opportunity Foundation for 10 years with Dionisio Morales. And for me, I'm used to opening the door to my office and seeing a food bank, a child care center, a gang reduction program. I'm used to that sort of involvement with folks. In a district where there's not a tremendous amount of participation, it all becomes a bit abstract, and that makes my job more difficult.
So how do you organize this to make what you would say would be representation that's more reflective of the community? How do you organize? Because as you mentioned, you've got at least a couple of generations. You've got the immigrant generation that has probably not become, maybe not even legalized themselves. But then you've got the next generation. They are legal, but maybe they don't care so much. How do you motivate those people?
Well, you go where the people are. In the same way that in previous generations, African American voter participation has centered around religious institutions, the churches where folks are. Here, you do the same thing. You go to the soccer leagues. You go to the fraternal clubs in the communities, and you start talking to people there, and that's where you start to rebuild public trust. I won my primary with 6,100 votes. There's somebody on the west side of Los Angeles who received 41,000 votes. She finished 4th place. So what's important in my district is starting to get people involved, and you do that not by creating civic institutions that are foreign to people, but by going to where they are.
Do you see, from your vantage point, both in Sacramento and in the 63rd District, do you see any significant changes in California as a place based upon the emergence and the official designation of this as a Latino-dominant state in terms of population?
Well, that happened a week or so ago, but you start to see changes in sort of some of the cultural, some of the institutions throughout the state, certainly.